is an interesting format. It is going to be very relaxed for today. My name is Peg Mazeika. I'm the South Region TAC for the Wisconsin Pbis Network. I am a Technical Assistance Coordinator for the South Region, as well as a Tier 1 and Tier 2 trainer. And I will be doing the main presenting today. The person doing our technical assistance backup is Stephanie Skolasinski, who is the East Region Technical Assistance Coordinator with our network. We will both be watching the question box and the chat box. What I would like you to do as you come on is please type your name, your school, your district, and your position into the question box. That is how you sign in that you are actually here, and that we can then give you credit for having attended this online community of learners. There's no big thrill for getting credit for it. It just helps us to know that, yes, you were truly here. So I am going to move on to our next slide, which is going to give people an idea of what to do with your dashboard. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay. Because all of a sudden what I was getting back, I wasn't hearing anything. So I want to just help orient you to your control panel. The audio section of the control panel, okay, is how you are connected. If you are on the phone and watching the computer, we will see a little telephone next to you. Right now, as you come on, Stephanie is muting everybody so that we don't get feedback from your environments. If you have a question or a comment, there is a little symbol to raise your hand. So if you just click on that, you'll see there's a green arrow. That means you're going to raise your hand. Then if you click it again, it puts your hand down. That way we can see on our screen that you have a question or a comment, and we will look to see what you want to say. If you don't have the ability to speak to us, type your question into the question box, and we will be watching that as well. If you are using a built-in mic and speakers, the mic and speakers option should be checked up here in your dashboard, right up here. If you're on the telephone, that will be checked. Okay. For the most part, we will be muting and unmuting you, so you don't have to worry about that. If you are trying to talk and we have unmuted you and it hasn't worked, then try unmuting yourself. If you have questions that you can contribute verbally, as I said, raise your hand. We will unmute you, and then you can just ask it. Or you may type questions into the question box pane, and we will respond to those. Stephanie will be watching that. I will be watching that. And very important, type your name, district, school, and position into that chat box so that we know that you're here. And if you have multiple people attending all in one group together, also put your district, the schools that they represent, and their names and positions. Okay? So first thing we want to know, because this is more about sharing and getting you the technical assistance you need. And so often we learn from those who are around us. We learn from those who are implementing. So I would just like you to talk amongst yourselves. If you have a group, designate somebody to speak for your group. If you are a single person representing your school, think about how you would like to report out on how things are going with your implementation. When you are ready to speak, raise your hand so that we will know that somebody is ready to speak with us. And what we want to know, how are things going with your Tier 2 implementation? And that includes your check-in, check-out. If you started a social academic instructional group, what kind of group was it? How is that going? If you have done any mentoring, whether it's the very simple mentoring, any of our Tier 2 interventions at all, including the brief FBA, BIP. And what we're looking for is, how's it going? Share success. Did you have an aha moment where you went, wow, that's what this is about, or wow, that really worked for this student, or wow, this is what we learned as we started this, as well as if you have questions or concerns. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to just decide what you want to say, and then we would like people to share out. And if people don't share out, then I'm a nasty presenter and I start calling on people. So looking for hands to be raised to say that you want to share. And right now I am going through and looking at our question box so I can see who is here so far. Thank you for signing in. I truly appreciate it. I see Maggie signed in because she had a question about that. You signed in the right place, Maggie. Thank you. And welcome Christina from Wauwatosa. Welcome Ken and Joy from Hain Elementary in Kaukauna. Welcome Rebecca from Crandon. Welcome Bob from Sunrise School.
Peg, we have a comment from Joy that says we need PD time for staff to learn Tier 2, and with all of the other district initiatives it is very difficult to find the time, as district support for PBIS has been inconsistent and seems to have diminished with almost an attitude of we already have done PBIS.
Wow, that's a tough one, and I don't have an easy answer for that one. I would say when you're thinking in terms of what to do, how to do it, if you feel that your PD time is needed with your staff, you can survey your staff to find out what areas they feel they need the most professional development in. You can also use your data to help guide you in where to start with that. So for example, if your data is showing that you've got a lot of minors and or majors coming out of your classroom, starting with using some of those classroom online modules that we have on our website would probably be a useful thing if that's an area of concern for you. And you can do those either as a group, like taking one module at a time and going through them. I've seen districts and schools that have done that, or just making them available to your staff, showing them where they are, showing them the format that they're in, because they are in a format where there's questions, there's a guide that goes along with them, so that people can go through them by themselves as well. And then, say, giving a week or two for people to go through a module, then getting together either in your grade level or as you get together at faculty and having time to discuss it. So those are some ways to know how to start, where to start. I totally hear your concern about being, just inundated with initiatives. The good news is that PBIS can be part of so many different initiatives as you start really looking at your data. So what I would say is, if you feel that you are really floundering at your Tier 2 implementation, take a look at your Tier 1, make sure it's good and strong, and then move slowly into Tier 2, letting your data guide you. because it will tell you where you need to start. It will let you know, okay, if we've got a lot of students that are having problems in our hallways, then we know we need to booster hallways. That's a tier 1 thing to do. If we see we have a small group of students that are having problems in our hallways, then you can start with a very small group of just those students that need to be boosted around specific behaviors in the hallways. So if they're in the hallways and they're getting very physical with each other. So that's where you use your data from your minors, from your office discipline referrals to really help guide you.
And anybody else?
Stay in touch. Stay in touch with your technical assistance coordinators and your external coaches.
Peg, I was just going to say, anybody else want to comment as well? Please raise your hand. Okay, Belinda said check-in, check-out implementation going well. Majority of students are finding success. Also finding students are participating before their behaviors are becoming too severe. We have one student finding success in mentoring. We are still trying to understand SAIG groups. Kind of an aha for us. Understanding difference between simple and complex SAIG will help us, as well as more information regarding simple and complex FBA.
Yay for your check-in, check-out. That's awesome. And I really am celebrating the fact that, as you said, the students are really benefiting from this before the behaviors are becoming more severe. Don't feel bad if you're not real sure about how and what to do with those SAIG groups. You're not alone. It is a different animal. It's not the way that we've been trained in the past by our other trainings that we got as educators to do this. So basically what you do is you start by looking at your data. You start by looking to see, okay, do we have small groups of students that have a commonality in either their minors or their majors? And with those majors, it should not be a real severe major. Like, we're not looking for kids in that basic social academic instructional group that are having severe behaviors. So but we are looking for groups of students who might be getting, minors in, as I had mentioned before, they might be getting minors in the hallways, repeated minors, or they might have some of those less severe majors in the hallway. So we see that student. Here we have another student. There's a third student. Now, can we take those students, and is there a commonality in the behaviors that they're having in the hallway? Are they all just doing horseplay in the hallway, goofing around? So now we take that group of students and we go through and we reteach the hallway behaviors. So you literally use your matrix that you developed at your universal level, and you're reteaching that matrix for the hallway area to those students, putting an emphasis on those behaviors that they were having problems with. And as you're reteaching it, you're giving them more intensity because you're teaching it in a smaller group. You're also giving them more opportunities to model it with you and with their peers in the small group, as well as now you're letting the teacher know that this is what we're working on. Please acknowledge the student at a higher rate when you see the appropriate behaviors happening, and prompt your whole group. And then really using that acknowledgement system to bring out those appropriate behaviors and get those appropriate behaviors more attention and more acknowledgement than they're getting for the inappropriate behavior. So it's really not as hard as I think people are afraid it is to do. I think the hardest thing is trying to find the time to do it. When do we do this group? Who teaches this group? It does not have to be a certified staff member. It can be a lunchroom supervisor. It could be a hallway monitor. It's somebody who knows the behaviors that are supposed to be happening in that area and can take this for a small amount of time. So this could be a 15-minute teaching period right before the kids go out for recess. It could be a 15-minute teaching period that is done, very quickly. But the important thing is that increased acknowledgement by the regular classroom staff, by all of the staff members that might be monitoring those hallways or monitoring that lunchroom, so that they know, okay, we're going to be watching for students that are doing the appropriate things, and we're going to be acknowledging at a higher rate for this group of students, as well as for the other students, but especially for this group of students. Hope that answers your question.
And
Steph, anything you want to add?
I just wanted to say that if you're joining us and you haven't had a chance to type in your name, title, district, and school in the question box, please do so now. That's how we record your attendance. And Karen has her hand raised, so I'm going to unmute Karen. Karen? Did you want to say something, Karen? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and mute Karen again. And
If Karen has a question, she can type it into the question box if we're not able to see. She's not able to talk to us.
okay. I have Dubec Elementary, East Troy, 4K through first grade check-in, check-out system is running smoothly. Responsibilities have been delegated to various staff members. That is a data person, SAIG being taught by counselor and psych, coaches doing a great job overseeing process, and principal is advocating for students and staff.
Can you please let us know what SAIG groups you've been able to start? Because that helps people to just know, okay, what did they start with? So if you could let us know that by typing that in, that would be awesome, and thank you for sharing.
Okay, I see that Karen did type a couple things. Check in, check out, working okay. Take daily data on and examine monthly. And she also said have 5 SAIG groups, 3 classroom behaviors, 1 grief, 1 anxiety. Has done 1 FBA for non-special ed with VIP and 2 FBA with special education students. Continue to work on universal supports, have an outstanding individual awards, have classroom rewards for classrooms, demonstrating desired behaviors from Little Vikes rubric.
Awesome. So when in your groups that you mentioned, and this is commenting for everybody, learning off of what they're doing, it sounds like they have 2 groups that are more intensive, SAG groups. That would be your group for grief and your group for anxiety. The other group that they have is one that would be more like that basic SAG group, which was about classroom behaviors. So that one is probably not going to be as long term. That might be just a couple meetings as they go over some of those basic classroom behaviors, and then more about keeping that acknowledgement up for the appropriate behaviors and watching to see how are these students doing, really looking at your data on that group of students. Whereas your students that are in that more intensive SAG group, the anxiety group and the grief group, that's going to be a longer term group. And you're going to be taking that a little bit slower. You're going to be working a little bit more intensely with those students. And you're going to be using their input as well as just, report back from staff members. How are they doing? Are you seeing them using their self-calming skills? And again, acknowledging those students when you see them using the skills that are being worked on in the group. So certainly no matter if you have the basic SAG group or you have the more intensive SAG group, letting your staff members know what it is that you're focusing on so that they know what to be looking for to acknowledge those students when we see those skills being used out away from the group. Because the whole purpose of this SAG group piece is not just to have the students demonstrating those skills when they're working with them with us, but that we really see that generalization as they get out back into the real world with those skills. And as staff members see that, it's important that they acknowledge it, because that means that we have a higher likelihood that we will continue to see those skills being used. And they will truly then become internalized skills that they have now got in their repertoire. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Hey,
what else you got, Steph?
Joy says, our building is doing fine. The challenge is rolling out Tier 2 building-wide as we have trained to start Tier 2 in only one grade and have rolled it out to another grade this year. Data is not an issue. We are doing well as a school, just not having time to train other grades.
Well, that's, again, time is money. Time is the commodity that none of us have enough of. I like that you are very comfortable with your data system. So as you start rolling it out, use your data to be your guide. Let your data tell you, okay, which is a grade level that we need to work on next. You'll know because you'll see either by the minors or by those majors that those students are getting that we need to do some work with this next grade level. And then that's how you start. You'd start by first working with that grade level staff. So if it's the 4th grade level, then you're working with that 4th grade staff. You're in servicing those staff members so that they know what it is that you're going to be working on. And having a staff member from the grade levels that are already implementing there to help in service is awesome because they can, just like we're doing right now, they share their stories, they share their successes, and they'll be the mentors that'll help those new staff members come on. But I'm glad you're taking it slow and you're working through the kinks. This is not a race. You've got to take it slow, and it's going to be different. Each school does it a little bit different, matched to their structure, their students, their staff. It's the overall systems to making sure that you have that data piece and that you're comfortable with it. As you said, it's working for you. Great. That you also have that data piece where you can track your students so that you can really tell, is this working for our students? And that you have those systems pieces that help you to know, okay, what do we do next? How do we know when we need to form another group? How do we know when we need to start looking at another Tier 2 intervention? Who's going to be in charge of that? Who's going to be monitoring that intervention? So it sounds like you're in a good place. Keep at it. Steph?
Okay. Yes, Karen, I'm going to unmute you because I see that you're willing to talk. So hopefully you'll be able to do that now. Are you there, Karen?
I'm here. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay! Sorry about that. We went from the speaker to the phone, so hopefully this will work.
That's good to know that that's helping you. So we'll use that in the future. Thank you.
So you read through a lot of our data that we shared with you guys in terms of the groups that we've been doing, the SAG groups that we've been doing, the grief group, the anxiety group. We do have a universal issue with our 3rd grade students, and so we actually did a screener for all the kids in the 3rd grade and identified students, and our school counselor actually used that as her SLO, so that we took data at the beginning of the year and assigned kids into SAG groups. We're not quite seeing the carryover from what they're learning in their SAG groups back into the classroom, but we did have teachers re-rate the students. A couple of them made progress, but I think we're really trying to look at how do we modify so that not only does she do the SAG groups, but then how does she do follow-up within the context of the classroom. So we're still tweaking that piece. I think that one big question that we would have for you is we're pretty data-driven in terms of how much data we collect around behavior, both positive and negative. One of the things that we do is we have an Outstanding Students Club. And so what we just initiated this year was the fact that students in Outstanding get recognized at lunch. But at the end of the quarter, we were also acknowledging those outstanding students, and they would get to do a special activity. The other students get to do an activity. It's just not the same activity. So we're wondering if that fits within the PBIS framework or kind of what your feedback is.
That's absolutely exactly what we would love to see, because everybody's getting acknowledged, and that's what you need for Universal. Those all-school celebrations are for all God's children.
But Peg, I think that's the question is we were the kids that made Outstanding went, but the kids that didn't make outstanding did an alternative activity. So we're tiering like what, and so we're wondering if that's not really what we should be doing, if we should be going back and saying when we get 100 outstanding students, everybody gets to do something.
Yes.
Versus just taking those 100 students.
If it's an all-school celebration, then, and your goal was to get 100 students, when you make those 100 students, the whole school celebrates. Those 100 students could also get something layered on top of that. So they could have preferred seating at that celebration. Let's say you have, you know, the whole school celebration is that you're watching a movie. Those 100 students might be sitting in the first couple rows for that movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what we had done, and I think this is where we did an alternative day where kids would do activities. So, but the kids that made the outstanding, they actually got to go off school grounds and do an alternative activity. And the other students remained here and did the alternative activities.
And that can work as well. I mean, what you want is if you have your school goal, those 100 students helped you to make your school goal, so everybody celebrated. You know, you might want to think, well, do we really want to do something that takes those 100 students away from the whole school in this celebration? Or do we want to keep them with the whole school as they celebrate and have them be a more active part of that celebration?
Yeah, that's what we're starting to rethink.
Yeah, and you know, again, this is a learning process. This is a learning process. What I was glad you didn't say was, we had this whole school celebration, and those 100 students got to celebrate it, but the rest of the kids really didn't get to do anything. So I'm glad that you had the celebration for the whole school as well.
And some of the kids that actually did the activities here said that they enjoyed it more than the bowling. But we were wondering, by tiering it, if that was like not within the context of PBIS. So that's helpful to know.
I have just a teacher question. I'm a fifth grade teacher here, and I guess my teacher question is, I have a couple of challenging students in my room, 4 to be exact, that didn't make it quite to outstanding. And there's definitely reasons why. One of them's in the anxiety group. One of them is, anyways, it's a whole gamut of reasons. And they didn't make it to the outstanding club, and I feel like they really are not the kids that are outstanding. So I guess my question is that if we're saying that, let's say all fifth grade, or if 80% of the fifth graders move up, everyone gets to do this, how is that teaching the kids that really need to work on becoming outstanding? How are we helping them? Because I'm not so sure that they should be going to this whole school thing if they're really not showing us in the classroom they can do this. And to be honest, we took 100 kids bowling, and I went on the field trip and was supervising because our principal, Karen, couldn't go. And those 100 kids were the most outstanding kids I have seen in a very long time, 3rd grade through 6th grade. They didn't leave one mess left on that. They picked up all their shoes. They put all of the bowling balls away. There was not a mess that a teacher had to pick up. And to me, as a teacher, I was so proud that those 100 kids did what they did. We got so many compliments from the people that were there in the public and the bowling alley saying that was outstanding. And so that's where I'm at. Like, I feel like if we would have taken some of those kids, they're not at the level yet to be able to handle situations like that. And maybe that's where our Tier 2 is coming in, where we need to up that a little bit to get these kids at that point. But do you understand where I'm coming from a little bit?
I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think you answered your own question. As you said, maybe that's where our Tier 2 comes in. As you're looking to see, okay, yes, we had this whole school celebration, and everybody that stayed back did get to celebrate, didn't they?
Yeah. they went through stations, they played with iPads, they did a science experiment. So, I mean, it wasn't, and we mixed them up 3rd grade through 6th grade, so they had their own group, and they were just rotating stations. So it was a fun day or a fun morning for them as well. It's not like, you know, we're back here doing homework.
Right, and so you were celebrating that success for everybody. You had another layer, you had that higher layer of the kids that got to go off campus.
Yeah, now, and the kids that stayed back actually moved up on we have a clip chart, behavior chart. All of the kids in our whole entire school moved up at least 15 times. So we told them that because everybody moved up 15 times, that was the reward for all of them going to the activity part, the activity day. And then the kids that actually made the outstanding 3 times were the kids that got to go to the bowling.
And see, you gave them something to aspire to, and you celebrated their success. Now, what happened if you had a student that hadn't moved up the right amount?
Everybody did. We looked at
everybody did. Right.
Well, it was an afterthought because we knew that the students staying back doing homework was not PBIS. So an afterthought was we went and looked at the data, and this is just being honest. We went and looked at the data and realized all the kids moved up 15 times. So that's what we told the kids was their goal. We didn't really make it ahead of time. However, I mean, we will from now on, but we had to look back and say, okay, look at the data. What did everybody do that we can at least celebrate and put out there? And so that's what we did.
And I'm so glad you did it that way because, number one, you made it concrete for the kids, and you found one of the areas where you needed to tighten it up. So now you say, okay, for the next one, you let everybody know right up front, this is our goal. And if you have some of those kids that are having a tough time, how do you help get them to that goal? You use more prompts. Staff prompt them more. You know, they remind them more. They use that acknowledgement for close to behaviors. Okay, you're doing good, Johnny. Hold it together. This is where you're at. You only need 2 more. And there may be some kids that have individual goals.
Okay. And that we do have kids that have individual goals. We do.
Right.
And so those kids, they're just not making it to that outstanding, which is okay. They're not there yet.
That's right. And so it's always those progressive steps to that goal. You're doing the right things.
Okay, and then very quick question, and then I'll let other people talk because I like to talk too. My other quick question is then, how do we get the parents involved with this? Because we obviously had a lot of parents wondering why their kid didn't get to go bowling. And you know that we don't really, I mean, we tell them that they need to make it to outstanding. We do everything that we need to do. But we still have those parents that feel that their child should be in that outstanding club. How do we, because we send a letter home saying that they get to stay back and do activities, et cetera, but we still had those parents who felt that it wasn't fair.
Well,
and kids too.
Right, and I think, you know, yes, letting, you know, the parents know right off the bat as you're starting a new, you know, quarter, this is our goal for this quarter. Students that make this level, this is what they're going to do. This is going to be our all-school celebration for, you know, the whole school. And then, you know, letting parents know periodically where their students are at. So maybe a report goes home every 2 weeks with just, you know, okay, your student did this. You know.
Okay. Yeah, and at least then they're up to date on where their kids stand.
Then they're up to date. And you can also, you know, let parents know how you're acknowledging the students, you know, so that, and this is an example I use all the time. My own son, when he was in school, their school was doing PBIS, he came home with an acknowledgement ticket, and I asked him, what did you get this for? He had no idea. He had no idea why he got that ticket. So making sure when staff are acknowledging students, if they're giving out an acknowledgement ticket, that they circle on there or they write on there, you know, very briefly, you know, you were being safe or you were being responsible, so that as it goes home, that student can say, oh, I got this and this is what I got it for. And making sure that staff use those words as they acknowledge the kids. Thank you for being safe. You know, you did a great job of being responsible today in the lunchroom when you picked up after yourself. It's amazing what a difference that can make in helping the kids to move up, as now they realize, oh, that's what I was supposed to be doing. We think they know, but sometimes they haven't connected the dots.
Karen, we
Good
have
questions. Thank you.
Yes, we have someone interested in what screener you used.
We actually had intended to use the AIMS screener, but they took that off. So we actually, I don't know the name off the top of my head. It is a questionnaire that has 12 adaptive questions and 11 maladaptive questions, and you rate them 1 through 5 on that scale. I can get it. I'll start looking and then I'll type it back to you.
Great, thank you. And do you want to just say what school you're from and give your email address, if you don't mind, and somebody can get in touch with you?
That's fine. We're Parkview Elementary School from the Parkview School District, and my name is Karen. So if you go on our website, you'll see Kay Strand. I'm actually the principal here, and I'm the Director of Student Services as well.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. Because this is really what this session is more about than anything else, is just this time for you to pick the brains of other people. And so thank you, Karen, for sharing all of your information. Anything else out there, Stephanie?
Yes, there's quite a bit. We do have people that are interested in an FBA BIP discussion.
Okay, so as we think in terms of FBA BIP discussion, in your training, we go into the brief FBA BIP, which is where you are working with students that do not have severe behaviors. Their behavior most of the time, and I'm using most of the time as our guiding word here, is not crossing environments. So they might have a behavior that's happening in one environment. They're not being safe in the hallway, or they're being disruptive just in the classroom, and it's not major disruption. That brief FBA is not for severe behaviors. The full-blown FBA is where we have behaviors that are crossing environments, or we have multiple behaviors that are happening in one environment. And it's not easy for us to know exactly what that student is getting out of it. Why is this behavior maintaining? Because that's the information that that FBA gives us. When we're looking at that brief FBA, we're looking at one environment. We're looking at what is that student getting out of it. And then we're trying to decide, okay, based on what they're getting out of it, either to escape or to get something, how can we get that for them more appropriately? So what skills do we need to teach them? And then what do we need to acknowledge as those progressive steps? And that becomes then your behavior intervention plan. And feel free to just shoot questions in there as we think more about that. I'm going to go into the PowerPoint and I'm going to advance it to actually a slide that covers that better, that literally goes into okay, here this slide talks about that brief FBA, where our goal is to really operationally define that behavior, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, especially that why, and then looking at the routines that are happening in that environment. Is this around lining up in the classroom? Is it around when there is discussion time in the classroom? Is it around when there is independent work time in the classroom? So not just classroom, but what is happening in the classroom at that time. And then really looking at, okay, what are those things that are those setting events? What is it about that independent work time in the classroom? What is it that that student needs help with? When are they acting out during that time? Is it when they have to start that independent work, or is it during the independent work, Or is it when they're done with work and now they don't know what to do with themselves until the rest of the group is done? So really looking at what is going on then, and based on what that setting event is and that trigger, all right, what are they getting out of it? What happens after they get up and move around the room? Are the peers giving them attention? Is the staff member getting them attention? Are they getting access to different activities at that time? And from that, then you build that behavior intervention plan. So you're starting to look at that misbehavior, really clearly defining it. What is it? When is it happening? Who's involved? You know, what's going on? How often is it happening? And then trying to figure out what are they getting out of it, or what are they avoiding? So are they up and moving around in the classroom because they don't want to do their seat work? You know, what is going on then? What is maintaining that behavior? And when we're looking at that getting and avoiding, are they getting some kind of stimulation? Are they getting social interaction? Are they getting or avoiding some kind of tangible? So that actual work, really thinking about that. And then, as you remember back to your training, we use the behavior pathway. And in the brief FBA, you use the FACTS, that functional assessment checklist for teachers and staff, where you're having that conversation with the staff member who knows that student best, or the staff member that's involved in that environment where the student is having a problem. And really trying to dig deeper. And you're starting with that problem behavior and saying, okay, this is what's going, this is where we want to get to. Okay, we want to get to this desired behavior, but we might have to settle for this acceptable behavior for right now. So using our example of the student in the classroom doing independent work, right now they're up out of their seat, they're moving around, they're getting attention from their peers, they're not getting their work done. It might be an acceptable behavior that that student picks another student to work with, and they can work with that student after they've done 2 of the problems by themselves. So do 2, then you can work with a peer to do the next 3. So now we've come up with a plan involving that acceptable behavior. They were getting, okay, they were given independent work to do. It's when they had to actually start that work that they were up and moving around the room, weren't getting anything done, but they were interacting with their peers. So now we've changed it so that they're given the work, they do 2 by themselves, then they can work with a peer, that's their payoff, to do the next 3 problems. So we're working with a progressive step to get them to that desired behavior. And we're always thinking about, from their perspective, what are they getting out of this problem behavior? Because they're getting something out of it or they wouldn't continue to do it. And this involves in the plan then, not only what are we going to do with that student, but also what are we going to do with that staff member. So how are we going to work with the staff member? Because sometimes it means that some things have to change in the way that the staff member prompts the student, or that that staff member is okay with the student doing 2 on their own, then moving to a peer to work with. So it really is a work in progress. And that's why we say this acceptable behavior is related behaviors that are more desirable until we get to that end-all of the student doing all of their work by themselves. So progressively we would increase, in the example I gave, the number of problems the student would do on their own, so that they're possibly doing 5 math problems and then they take it to a peer to be checked. That answer your question, I hope? And throughout this whole thing, what we're looking for is teaching the student a new way to get their needs met, so that they're not just using that problem behavior, because that behavior is working. Right now it's working, or they wouldn't continue to do it.
So Peg, you touched on a little bit how the difference between a brief and complex. Do you have anything to add to that, as one of our participants asked that question?
When you're looking at the complex, you're looking at behaviors that are they're not just happening in one environment, or they are a more severe behavior. They're impacting more areas of concern. So it's not just that the student isn't able to do their independent work. They may be doing multiple things in that classroom setting. So it may be one setting, but you've got multiple behaviors going on. Or it may be that you have behaviors going on across multiple environments. And when that happens, you have to do more than just the facts, that functional assessment checklist with teachers and staff, where you're talking primarily with one staff member that knows that student well. Now you're talking to multiple staff members, and you want to get more information about across their day. Not only when are the bad things happen, but when doesn't the student engage in that problem behavior. And you're looking at what are those antecedents and those setting events for those problem behaviors, those slow triggers, those things that may have happened in the background before school or before they went out on the playground that then led up to that blow up on the playground that then got carried back into the classroom. And now there's been an issue in the classroom and we can't get the student back. So it's more severe behaviors and they're crossing environments. And it's more intensive as far as the staff members that we work with in the full-blown FBA, and the behavior intervention plan that comes out of it is a more complex plan. You're still using the behavior pathway, but you have more intensive work that's going on within it. And oftentimes you're tracking that student for longer. The interventions might be multiple layered interventions that you're using in the complex FBA. Whereas out of this brief FBA, it may be part of that behavior intervention plan that comes out of that brief FBA is a small group intervention that you're going to use, and then you're going to track that student's performance using your DPR to see how are they doing. Whereas out of your complex FBA, it might be that they're in a group. It might also be that there's some work that's going on with the parents or with the community support. It might be that there is some additional support being given from a social worker or a guidance counselor for the student. They might be in a small group, and they might also be in one of those more intensive groups, such as for anxiety at the same time. So there's more levels of support that are coming out of that complex FBA. Anything you want to add in there, Steph?
I do have a question. At what point do the parents become involved in the FBA BIP process?
My suggestion on that is let the parents know, even when you're doing that brief FBA, that this is the data that you're looking at, and because of this data, you're going to be talking to Johnny's teacher about what goes on here from that. So you're basically explaining the process to the parents. This is often done by a phone call. You know, similar to how we do a phone call when a student enters check-in, check-out, and say, well, your student's going to be joining the check-in, check-out group. You know, this is how they got into that group. Your teacher noticed this, so we have this data that's going on, and this is going to be the process for it. Some schools have already prepared information that go out when students enter a Tier 2 intervention, so that's sent to the parents, and then parents are encouraged to get back to you either by email or phone, you know, if they have questions about it. Same thing with that brief FBA. Educate your parents, get information out there. How do you do it? Do you do it through something that gets sent out to everybody? Do you do it by information that's sent out quarterly? Do you do it by information that's sent out, you know, once a year? That's your team's decision. But as a student enters the intervention, my suggestion is you revisit that information with the parents. Send it to them again. Say your student is going to be part of this brief FBA process. This is the process. This is what we will be doing. We will keep you apprised of our information, you know, to let them know what that behavior plan is going to look like that has been developed for their student. So I say the important piece is you keep those parents informed and keeping that door open for them to ask questions, whether it's by phoning you or it's via email. You know, keep that conversation going with the parents, as well as ideas for how they can reinforce this new behavior and strengthen it at home as well, or out in the community as well. Any other questions?
The other aspect of that is the behavior of cultural learned behavior, or is so we can get some of that information from parents as well as students, involving
Absolutely.
Involving students in the FBA BIP process is important as well. You know, that will vary depending on the age of that student. Peg, do you want to add more to that?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because some behaviors are a challenge within the culture of the school, and a good one is blurting. You know, some students, they're a challenge as they're just young and they blurt. That's just what they do. But also within some of our cultures, that is part of their culture to just share out their feelings, to give an affirmation, you know, out loud in church. But we don't do that in school. So recognizing as staff members that there may be some things that are going on that are culturally a mismatch with what we expect at that time in our classroom. Another example, having a student look at us when we're correcting them. Within some cultures, that is not acceptable. They are taught from very young, if you are being corrected, you look down. You keep your eyes down, that is showing respect. But sometimes teachers want students to look at them. So when a behavior is becoming a behavior of concern, that's another place where you can connect with parents and just have that conversation and say, well, this is what's going on. You know, what is your feeling on this? And if you're dealing with a student that is of a different culture, it's okay to say, you know, is there something that clashes within your culture? Because you as a staff member may not know that. And asking that parent, okay, what would you suggest? What would be helpful for us to know about your student? You know, if this is a highly anxious student, what would be helpful to know about this student? So that we have that information so that we can be more understanding and we can be more supportive of them. So I think the more you keep parents informed and involved, the better off you are, whether it's a brief or it's a more complex. And definitely in the complex, the parents need to be part of those conversations. But I encourage it at the brief as well. Keep them informed, even if it's the conversation is going on via email or through brief phone calls. But let them know that data. How are those students doing? They want to know. Steph?
Are there any participants that would like to talk or ask any questions about FBA, BIP? I have more questions about SAIG groups, but I don't want to, I want to continue the FBA, BIP discussion if there is anything.
Okay, so while you're looking for that, what questions do you have on the SAG groups?
Well, Karen did comment on the screener they're used is the SSBD, the Systematic Screening for Behavior Disorders. It is a universal tool used by many PBIS schools and states as a universal screener to determine Tier 2 and Tier 3.
Yes, and it is a fairly commonly used screener, and it's pretty easy for staff to use. It is called a gated screener, so that staff, it goes through gates, and in that way you kind of determine your students. It was talked about in the training because you get so much in the training, it may not have all sunk in. So you can Google SSBD screener, and you'll get information on it, be able to read more about it that way.
Peg, we have someone that wants to know if you get permission from parents to do the brief FBA.
It is not necessary, but I think certainly keeping parents informed. And that is a decision on your part. Certainly a decision for you to have that discussion with your administration about how you want to proceed on that. Because this is a small group, or it is not an individualized intervention, it is a small group intervention, and it is not as intensive as a full-blown FBA. There are some schools that don't get parental permission, but rather they use a universal informing parents in the handbook that these are the interventions that we have available. You know, please sign that you have received this handbook, and by signing that you've received this handbook, you are signing that, yes, your student, you know, is open to having these interventions. Truly an administrative decision on that one that comes from your principal and your district administrators. Good question, though. We always get that question.
Okay, it's 9:27.
Anything else?
It's 9:27, and Peg and I can stay on longer, but in case anyone needs to leave at 9:30, Peg, can you touch on the fidelity assessments that should be conducted coming up soon?
Yes. As part of Tier 2 implementation, similar to the benchmarks of quality that you do at Tier 1, we have the benchmarks of advanced tiers that is the fidelity tool that is used once a year by the Tier 2 teams and Tier 3 teams. It is also accessed through the Pbis Assessment site, the pbisapps.org, and then you click on Pbis Assessment. And you take it very similar to the way you take the benchmarks of quality. You take it as a team discussion. So you discuss as a team, you come to a consensus, and then one member enters the information online. And again, this is done once a year. We suggest that it gets done sometime between March and the end of the year. Because quite often we have members that are part of the Tier 2 team that are also part of the Tier 1 team, there will be some people that will be taking part in both of the discussion for benchmarks of quality at Universal as well as the benchmarks of advanced tiers at Tier 2. If you have Tier 3 interventions, there are questions about Tier 3 on the benchmarks of advanced tiers as well. So you rate yourself if you think this is in place, partially in place, or not in place. And then you are talking about your primary Tier 2 intervention, your primary Tier 3 interventions.
So Tony, your question is, Peg is referring to the BAT, the benchmarks of advanced tiers. Peg, do you want to clarify the difference between the BAT and the MAT?
The MAT is the measurement of advanced tiers tool, and that is similar to the TIC, the Team Implementation Checklist that's taken at Tier 1. The MAT is designed to help you to really fine-tune your implementation as far as building your systems at Tier 2. So the MAT is taken ideally about once each term, so once in the first semester, once in the second semester, and then the final measurement is the benchmarks of advanced tiers towards the end of the year. The MAT is designed to be taken a couple times a year, and it is not as in-depth as the benchmarks of advanced tiers is, but it is designed to help you fine-tune your building of those Tier 2 systems.
Thank you. Michelle said by the time you get to the brief FBA, the parent should already be in the loop because of the check-in, check-out piece. That's a good piece of information.
Yep.
Belinda said, as a resource, we found the basic FBA to BSP manual from pbis.org extremely helpful. And we have a clarifying question. Please clarify which tier FBAs occur, Tier 2, Tier 3.
They occur at both, with the brief FBA occurring at the higher Tier 2 level. So ideally, as Michelle Polzin mentioned, ideally your student has been involved in check-in, check-out, or some other Tier 2 interventions before you've gotten to that brief FBA. So again, that layering of interventions as we move up in the tiers. And I'm going to move back here in my PowerPoint. As we look at this, and within this slide, it lists all of our Tier 2 and Tier 1 universal interventions. And you can see it's about that layering. So we start with that universal. Did this student have access to everything at that universal? And then we start layering on there those Tier 2 interventions, with that first one typically being check-in, check-out. And then from that, we see from our check-in, check-out data and from our universal data, we have this small group of students, and we create that SAG group, that small group intervention. Or we have some of those students that need a little bit more intensive Tier 2 intervention. And then if we're still not seeing that student improving, now we're trying to figure out, okay, what is it that they're getting out of this misbehavior? And that's where we do that brief FBA. That is still at Tier 2. It is high Tier 2. Okay, so we're now in this area up here, okay, where we're kind of in a very light orangey red color. Okay, we're not quite at those Tier 3 intervention levels. That complex FBA is happening up here at that Tier 3 level. So between the levels, nothing is cut and dried. We have some blending up here as we're looking right here for those students that are starting to fall out. And we're starting to layer on interventions here. And now we're looking at our data for those students that still might need more. And we're trying to figure out right here with that brief FBA what more might they need. And what might come out of that is that we decide, you know what, the brief FBA isn't enough. It's not giving us enough information, and we need to move that student up into the next level. So we may decide as part of that, as it goes to that problem-solving team, that that's not enough information for us, that this student has more complex needs. We need to do a full-blown FBA. So it's more about those conversations that go on and that data that comes out of our behavior intervention plan that helps to guide us into what more do we need for this student. Anything you want to add, Steph?
No, that sounds good. If people want to continue on, there are some, okay, I do have a question from Maggie. How many weeks do you need to wait when layering on Tier 2 interventions before moving to the brief FBA?
You want to be looking at your data. Your data will guide you. You want to be looking to see, is this student making any improvement at all? If they're making improvement with some, ups and downs within their data, it's like, okay, that's where that problem-solving team is really looking at that. That systems team is looking at that overall systems health, and the problem-solving team is looking at that student data to say, okay, I think we just need a little more time here, but if they're not progressing at all, they're still having a lot of problems, this isn't working. You don't want to let a student sit in an intervention that isn't working. And, as a ballpark figure, if they're in intervention 2 weeks and you're not starting to see some improvement, this is where you have that conversation again with staff members and say, okay, what is your gut feeling on this? We're not seeing improvement. Do we need to intensify here? That's why we say that for those Tier 2 interventions, you're looking at your data every 2 weeks at least. Other questions?
The other questions, there are questions around SAIG groups, brief versus complex, if you can identify the difference.
The brief group is not a group that is long-standing, so it might be in existence for only, a couple meetings. It might be meeting for 15 minutes, over 3 weeks' time, 15 minutes twice a week over 3 weeks. As you start to see that those students are improving, now you're fading them back, because part of that is figuring out how you fade them back, and are they still maintaining as you fade them back? So it might be in existence for 3 weeks of instruction, and then you have 2 weeks of fading back. So it might be 5 weeks. Then we're back to just, seeing based upon our minor data, how are they doing? The more complex, the more intensive SAG group, as I mentioned before, that might be a group such as a grief group, or it might be a group that is dealing with anxiety. So it's longer term, and you have more intensive lessons. Those lessons might be lasting for a greater amount of time. Instead of a 15-minute time that you're meeting, it might be a group that is meeting for a half hour. And they might be meeting for that half hour once a week, and it might be going on across a semester or across a quarter. But you're still looking for that data to show you now how are we tracking that they're internalizing this. So you have some data that's attached to this that is telling you, are they using these skills across their day? Are they able to monitor themselves? So your data is really looking at not just staff members rating the students, but now are the students starting to self-monitor? And through that self-monitoring, we're gradually fading them off. So that now it's gone on for a quarter. Now as we continue on, we're watching our data, we're starting to fade it back. We're monitoring, but we're not meeting as intensively. So in a nutshell, that brief SAG group is shorter term, shorter time in the lessons, shorter term as far as the monitoring. The more complex or the more intensive SAG group is longer term, longer times typically in the lesson times. It might be longer time within the amount of time within the quarter or the semester that the group is going on, and always planning for that monitoring as that student starts fading back the support. They may be going from that more intensive intervention, that more intensive SAG group, down to a check-in, check-out, and then from that monitoring themselves and then gradually moving out of check-in, check-out.
Christine, your comment about our impression has been that SAIG is based on behavior, not necessarily life circumstances or situations. That
Yes.
is, yeah, that's accurate, whether it's brief or complex. It's based on the response the student has. So if the student is going through a divorce and the response is anxiety, it could be about coping skills to manage that anxiety. Peg, do you want to touch more on that?
Yes, you can have those more intensive groups that are based upon things such as a student, because the student is going through a divorce, they're having some anxiety from that divorce, and so they are in that anxiety group. They're not automatically put in a group because they are going through a divorce. We are looking for that student to be showing that they need that. So it's not just about the fact that this is going on in their life, but this is impacting their life and it's showing up this way. So you're absolutely right in what you're doing. It's based upon that student's behavior, that they're showing the need for this group.
And we had a question around data tracking tools to progress monitor for SAG groups.
Typically, you're using the DPR, that daily progress report, across all of your Tier 2 interventions. So that becomes that tool that you use. As the student moves into a SAG group, your daily progress report is going to be reflective of what that student is working on in that group. So if they are working on safety, say in their SAG group, it's a group around safety. And so you're going to be looking at really monitoring how is that student doing in that safety part throughout their day or in that environment. So you're still using that DPR. It's just using it to now track what that student has been working on within the SAG group.
Are there any other questions? Would anyone like to raise their hand and comment? I think I've covered everything, so if I missed anything, please comment.
And we want to encourage you to stay in touch. You can reach either Stephanie or myself on our WisconsinPBISnetwork.org website. I'm going to bring it up right now on my screen. And as I back out of this, if you go to the Contact Us button or the Regional Coordinators button, either way, you can get at us. Based upon your region, you can see who the technical assistance coordinators are. You can see us listed right here on your screens so that you have the technical assistance coordinators listed. Within your districts, typically you would go from your school coaches to your external coaches within your districts. If you don't have an external coach, feel free to contact us and we will try to help you out as best as we can to connect you with somebody within your district as support, as well as trying to give you the support immediately from us. So you have access to us. So here's how you find us. WisconsinPBISnetwork.org, that's going to our website, then the contact button up on the top. And that gives our phone numbers and our email addresses to contact us.
And Peg, I do have one more question. Can you recommend other evidence-based curriculums for SAG besides Strong Kids?
I have seen people that have used the several curriculums, but typically what we suggest is that you start with that initial, that simple SAG group, not using a written curriculum, but rather using your matrix as your curriculum so that you are more intensively teaching your matrix using your cool tools. So you've already got the curriculum in your hands. You start with those cool tools that were used for your initial teaching of your matrix. So you're going back to those lessons that were used here. Then as you start moving up, as you go on to our website under Tier 2 supports, you will see curriculums listed there. I know Second Step is used by schools. And Steph, I'm blanking on any of the other ones.
Someone else.
Second Step is one that's used.
Someone else mentioned Stop and Think curriculum on today on a comment.
Yeah, and typically what we do is we will list things that have come up in training on our website. There is also a, if you just do a Google search, if another resource is going to our national network and looking for Tier 2 level supports. But what you want to start with is more intensively reteaching your matrix for that small group of students. Take that area of the matrix that they're having problems with, go through those cool tools for that area of the matrix, and making sure that that acknowledgement system is being used to really truly acknowledge those appropriate behaviors at a higher rate, and then gradually fading that down. Any other questions, Steph?
Nope.
All righty.
Just
Thank
for,
you.
yep, sorry, Peg. We are hoping to, I am recording this, and we are hoping to have this on our website at some point. We do not have the previous community of practice webinars up quite yet.
But they will get posted. We are not quite sure when yet because they're still being formatted to be posted. But we will be having, and I'm going to go back to my my PowerPoint here, if it will let me. Okay, these are the upcoming Community of Learners, April 16th. We have another one of these meetings just like today. Our focus is action planning from data, but again, we will be taking questions on anything. That'll be April 16th from 12 to 1, so different time of day. And then on May 12th from 3 to 4 p.m. And our focus on that one will be a panel of implementers. So people that are implementing various Tier 2 interventions will be available just for you to share what their experience has been and to answer questions.
We're hoping
so
that,
those are our,
sorry, Peg, that we're hoping the May 12th will be focused on SAG groups.
yes, because that does seem to be an area that we do get most of our questions on, but we will be looking for implementers. We're hoping to have an implementer with check-in, check-out, couple SAG group implementers, and hopefully somebody who will be willing to share how they're doing with their brief FBAs or with mentoring or other Tier 2 interventions.
And the PowerPoints are posted on our website. Peg, I don't know if you can bring that up. That was a question someone just asked.
Yes, if you go to the Tier 2 interventions, Pbis, Wisconsin PBIS network.org/Tier 2, okay. That didn't work the way it was supposed to. There we go. Under Tier 2 materials, this is where you can see all of those materials and you can access all of the materials from the trainings. You got access to this when you did your training. That's how you access the online materials. So certainly this is another resource for you. And then those people that signed in, we will shoot an email to you with the PowerPoint from today attached. And as you signed up for the webinar today, we have also your information. So we will make sure that you do get a copy of this PowerPoint from today. The PowerPoint today was taken, everything was taken right from the materials that were used in the S400, which is the Brief FBA Day. So all of the material, the slides that I took were right from the PowerPoint from that day. And we also want to cue you to this action planning toolkit. It helps you in creating your behavior intervention plan from your brief FBA. Where it's, okay, this is what needs to be done, person responsible, by when are we going to review it, which is key, and then what is our decision as we review it. So that's an important tool for you. So going back into those Tier 2 training tools is a really important resource for you. Anything else, Steph?
No, Maureen, could you type in your name, position, school, and district, and if there is anyone else with you as well? I know you came in a little later, so we just want to be able to document your participation. And I think that is it, unless there's any other questions.
All righty, thank you all for attending. We appreciate your questions. This, I think, worked quite well as this time to share and get questions answered, and hopefully also have, ideas shared by the people that were with us. So thank you very much for attending, and we look forward to hopefully possibly seeing you on April 16th or hearing from you on April 16th as well as May 12th. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Steph, when you make your copy, when you download the attendance list, If you want to send that to me, then I will attach the PowerPoint and send it out to at least one person from each group.
Okay.
How many did we have attend overall?
I think there were 14 or 15. I'm just
Yeah,
saving
that's what I thought too.
saving the questions log. I don't think there was anything in the chat. No.
I don't think anybody used the chat.
Let me stop recording.